Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This little project has been a long time coming. I have had this stencil set, which is the Tailored Expressions. It's the Create in Quads stencil. So this is the large 8.5 by 11 stencil set. And this one is called Hearts. And this was the one that came out for Valentine's Day. And so I actually filmed this in January right after I got the stencil. And I've since read some reviews about it that a lot of people said that they couldn't get it to line up. I don't think you can see it in this shot, but there are some little registration marks along the outer edges. They're just little squares. And the thing that I like to do when I use these stencils is use my Waffle Flower stencil blending mat, because you can position your stencils so that they're right in the corner and they don't move around, especially since the mat is made of silicone. So it's very helpful. So I started out just blending this first layer, and what I discovered, here I'm like marking the registration marks. So I blended this first layer, and for that layer I believe I used, what color did I use for that? I think that was probably Candied Apple Distress Ink. And what I discovered is that when I went to line it up the second time, it doesn't line up exactly perfect to make a perfect heart. And that's what a lot of other people had said that they found with these stencils. So I don't know if there was a manufacturing error. And I know that some people sent theirs back for a refund, and I didn't want to do that. I figured, you know, it's not so difficult to make it line up. It's just not going to line up with the registration marks. So what I did here was I took a black pen. Once I got it lined up fairly close to the correct position, I just marked it with the little registration marks with the black pen, so that I could kind of monitor with each layer how off it was, and then I could adjust accordingly. And that worked for me. It may not work for everybody, but it's certainly worth a try. If you purchase the stencil and it's not lining up, give that a try. It's just a basic shape. If it was a more complicated shape, I don't know that I would have done that, but since it's basically just hearts, I just went ahead and did that, and it seemed to have worked well for me. So here for my second layer, I'm doing some really bold colors on this, kind of very non-traditional, sort of non-traditional Valentine's colors. So I went in with some black soot, and I did speed through some of this. I was having issues with my camera moving around again for some reason. When I do certain things, it seems to do that. So I'm not really sure what that's all about, but just bear with me here. So I'm inking in this second layer, and I did go back over some of these to get a little bit darker impression, because it didn't saturate the paper completely. So you can see there where it's a little off on some places, and here I'm just going to adjust it slightly and kind of fill in a couple of those places where it's painfully obvious that it's off. And that worked just fine. I didn't really have too much shadowing from this, and it seemed to work pretty well. So I believe that it probably was just a manufacturing error where things were off just slightly when they cut the stencils. But as you can see, it blended out perfectly. It looks pretty good. There's a couple little areas. And really, by the time you cut these down and you put them on card panels, you're not even going to notice them. So I just forged on here, and I'm checking the alignment again here using my little registration marks, double checking to make sure it's going to line up. And I can't remember if I marked this one again. I guess I did not. So for this layer, I am using worn lipstick. I believe this is worn lipstick. Yes, I think so. I have the four colors I used were worn lipstick, black soot, picked raspberry, and candied apple, and those were all Distress Inks. So I'm just going through and again kind of adjusting as I go, and kind of moving things around a little bit just to make sure it lines up as I go along. And the media mat really is helping with this. It does generally hold, since it's in the corner, it kind of holds your stencil in place It doesn't shift too much with this. And again, since this is a large stencil, it's an 8.5 by 11, so it's essentially the size of a full sheet of paper. So that also makes it a little bit easier too. You're not trying to blend on a smaller sheet of paper. I'm just adjusting as I go here. And it worked pretty well. And I think this color combo, in the end, when I first started out, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but it actually turned out really well. I enjoy the color combo, and I actually, sometimes I struggle to pick colors when I'm blending and coloring and things like that. And I purchased a book. I believe it was a used book off of Amazon that just has different color palettes. And so what I did with this was I started with the base color palette of pink, and I went to that section of the book and I looked through all the different color combinations that they had and just picked out one that kind of was bold and stood out at me. And the end result, I think, turned out really well. So that's an option. I know that there's a few apps that you can download. I know Jennifer McGuire has talked about some apps that she uses, and those are helpful as well. If you struggle with ink color combinations or coloring combinations, that's a good alternative, just to have a point of reference, like a jumping off point. And here is my last layer. I'm going to put down here, and you can see there's a couple little places where it will overlap, and that's going to be fine. And I think for this one, I actually started out with Kitsch Flamingo, and I decided that it wasn't going to be bright enough. So you'll see me switch here in a little bit. And I think this is the layer that I did worn lipstick on. Yeah, that's my worn lipstick. So I'm just blending that on. I think the last layer, the last two layers seem like they have most of the smaller hearts, so it goes pretty quickly when you're blending these together here. And I did go over this one a couple times as well. I did edit this down quite a bit just because I didn't think you wanted to sit and watching blending for days. So just to give you an idea of what I did here. So, and I think you could also use, I know Waffle Flower has another, just a media mat that you can use for watercoloring. And I know that the stencil will fit inside that as well. So that's another alternative that you could use. If you already have the Waffle Flower mat, you could use that. You don't need to buy the stencil mat. I just prefer the stencil mat. I think it works well for this purpose, especially with the large stencils. So I think there was just really, with this set, I think there was probably, like maybe the two middle stencils that seemed to not line up as well as the others. And here you can see it looks pretty good. I did go back over just a couple of places I think that weren't quite perfect. And there's definitely, when you look at it up close, there's a couple of places where the hearts don't quite match together, but it's really not that noticeable. So now I'm going to cut these down. So this will give you 4 card panels for your background. So they cut down to roughly an A2 size. So I'm just cutting off the registration marks and cutting those down a little bit, trimming off the edges. And I did go back later on, I think a couple of them. I don't think I did it on all of them, but I did go back with a corner rounder, and I rounded the corners on a couple of them as well. I thought that was a nice touch, since obviously the hearts are more rounded. I thought the square looked a little harsh in some aspects. And you could do a lot of cool things with these. If you didn't want to use it as a card panel, like this one, for example, would make a really cool bookmark. You could cut down just that blended portion and make a bookmark or something like that for someone special for Valentine's Day. And this one, I kind of think looks like an angel when it's upside down. So I suppose you could use that for Christmas. It's kind of fun. So there are my 4 card panels. So what I decided to do, I didn't use all tailored expressions with this. I had this Concord and Ninth, all the love dies. I believe these came out a couple years ago, maybe. And there are 5 dies in this set. And I had it in my stash, so I just cut some foil background paper in most cases, or I used glitter paper, and just kind of paired them up with my ink blended backgrounds to figure out what was going to work best. And then I cut the additional pieces from the Concord and Ninth, all the love dies, also from some foil paper, except for the one right there in the middle, which I cut from some white cardstock, and I just did some ink smushing on that and some splattering on that. And now I'm going to assemble all of these cards. And the thing that I didn't know about that, I don't know why I didn't know this, that Concord and Ninth die set, for some reason, I thought that the love was all one piece, and it is not. It cuts the L and the O and the V and the E separately. So keep that in mind if you want to buy this, and they do still have it in the Concord and Ninth store, so you can search for it there. It's still available. But then that way you can cut them out and realize that they are separate. But I guess in a lot of ways that's kind of cool, because then you can kind of alter the way that it goes on your card panel. So you can shift it if you wanted to do a slimline card, you could do that. So it gives you a few options since they're not connected. I was thinking if they were connected, I could just cut them apart, but I didn't have to do that. So that was a bonus. So for all of my love dies, I cut all of those from white cardstock, so I have at least 2 layers of white cardstock, and then glued that to the foil cardstock that I used. And I'm just lining those up and putting them in the center and putting a little liquid adhesive on them, and then setting a clear block on them. And these are the Tailored Expressions. These are called the pre-printed simple strips. They're the simple strips in reverse. So these are sentiment strips from Tailored Expressions. They're pre-printed, and they work with the simple strips dies. You can cut them out. I think you can also foil these. I did not try that, but you should be able to foil them. So it would foil the negative, so the black part would be foiled, and then you'd have white lettering. But they were a quick and easy option for doing sentiments on these. And they're pretty inexpensive too. I think you get like a pack of 10 for like $4. So it's a good value if you have a bunch of Valentine's cards. I believe they also have Christmas ones as well. And then you just buy the simple strips die set, and you can cut them all out, and you have a whole bunch of sentiments to mix and match for your cards. So it's a quick and easy alternative to stamping and heat embossing, or stamping all of your sentiments. And this, I normally don't do this, but I was running out of my hot pink foil cardstock, and so I had cut my simple strips out of that. I have some other simple strips, and I didn't want to waste the background, so I just glued it behind, and no one will ever know. I don't do that often, but when it comes to foil, I don't want to waste it, so so that was a little thing I did. No one will ever know, so you have to keep my secret. And here I did the same thing with the heart. I added some additional cardstock behind it just to give it a little bit more dimension on my card panel. So I glued that in place. And then the Concord and Ninth, all the love dies, it has one die in there that has a bunch of little X's and O's. I believe it cuts 6 total, which is what you see right there. So it's one die, and it cuts all those pieces at the same time, so you don't have to run it through your die cutting machine multiple times. Although you could, and those would make awesome shaker elements if you wanted to do that. So that's another idea. And I am just going to put some glue on my sentiment here and glue that over my foiled heart. And I'm using my tweezers to get that in place. And I had a little bit of issues with extra glue, so I used my the end of my little crystal katana there to get a little bit of the excess glue off. And that works well for getting rid of excess glue. Unfortunately, it shows a little bit on the foil, but it's not too bad. I try to be more careful with the second one. Don't put too much glue on it. Glue and the dimensional foam are my arch nemesis. Always have issues with both. So I'm going to set that on there. Once it's dry, I'm going to go ahead and add in these little X's and O's kind of falling along the bottom of the card. So they look like they're just kind of falling down out of the heart, maybe? I don't know. I thought they were kind of cute with the little glitter. They're cut from glitter cardstock. It was a fun element just to add to it. And an easy way to embellish your card if you don't want to add additional embellishments, you could add these too. They make for some fun Valentine's cards. And then I believe there's also a little tiny heart die in that set. I think that's where that little heart came from too. So it cuts a little tiny heart also. And I did glue that on the card also. Up there in the upper right. Just filling in the white space. Sorry, I'm a little off camera here. And one more. I was going to put it there and I decided it would kind of get lost, so I put it up there at the top. Decisions. So, once this card is done, we will move on to, I believe it's the one that I did the splatter on. And it was a lot of fun to ink smush that and do the splatter. So I did not get that on camera, but I basically just smushed some of the, I believe I used the Worn Lipstick and the Picked Raspberry. No, I'm going to do this one. Sorry. This card, when I cut it down, it was a little bit off center, and I tried to trim it down a little bit more, and I cut even more off. So I used, it's an old die from my stash that cuts like an X border, and I just trimmed it down even more, cut the X border, and put that onto some glitter cardstock, and then just added my love there on my card panel and popped it up with the little sentiment. This is all, I believe it says all you need. Or love is all you need. I think it's, or maybe, yeah, love is all you need. So from the Beatles, anybody who's a Beatles fan. So I'm just going to pop that over top. Really, really cute. I didn't think I was going to like the way it turned out, but actually I think adding that little border around it helped. So again, this one I just ink smushed the letters onto my waffle flower media mat and added a little bit of water and just got some color on some white cardstock. And then I cut that down with the love die. I believe I did some black ink splatter and some silver ink splatter and some shimmer spray on that also. So let that dry quite a bit. And then I'm just adding this to some glitter cardstock. And I'm going to use, I had an extra U from the Love U from the All the Love dies. And I just used that here in place of the other love. I thought that kind of made it a little frilly with the cursive U. I kind of like the way it brought it together. And I did cut that from also some, it's like a pink foil cardstock. And I'm just going to put this onto my card panel with some dimensional foam. Pop it up a little bit. I thought about popping up the love dies, but with the skinniness of the V, I wasn't really sure if I would be able to do that with dimensional foam, so I kind of just let it go, and that's why I added so much cardstock to them, to give them a little bit more bulk to make them look a little more dimensional. And it worked out in the end. I think these turned out really cute. I think this actually might be my favorite, even though I love the foil. And I love all the foil extras. But I think the ink splatter is probably my favorite. It turned out really cute. And then I did go through and embellish these with some pearls and some gems and things like that. I did not get all of that on camera. I know I used some gray. They're not really shiny pearls. They're more like a flat colored gray pearl on a couple of them, or on one of them, and then I used some pink pearls on one of the others. And then on this one I'm just using some little white enamel hearts. And I ended up putting 3 different sizes in here. It turned out cute. I think I was going to use the black, but I decided that they would get lost in the black part of the cardstock, so I didn't do that. I went with the white. And then this one, I have some little clay candy hearts. I'm going to add some clay candy hearts to it. Not too many, because I have all the X's and O's on there. So I'm just going to pop a couple of those on there just for a few more little hearts. A couple different places. Really, with these backgrounds and the die cuts that you add on top of them, you really don't need to do too much in the way of embellishments. You really don't have to add any embellishments, but I thought they would be cute. So, and I also think that that's something that the recipient will enjoy as well. So here is a look at my final cards. I think they turned out great. I would highly recommend this stencil from Tailored Expressions, the Create in Quad Love stencil. And even if you have issues with it, I think there's a way to make it work if you just work with it a little bit. So don't give up. I hope you've enjoyed today's cards. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click like and subscribe to get all of my content. Thanks so much.